So we are still in chapter 1 of the book, The Gift of Being Yourself. How y'all doing so far about being yourself? Not so
A little
bad.
uncomfortable.
Huh?
That's a lot.
A little uncomfortable? Okay. All right. That's honest. Nobody really paying attention. Okay, good. All right.
That's easier.
All right, we're going to turn to Galatians chapter 4. I'm going to read verse 9. Am I read it?
It says, but now that you have come to know God, or rather to be known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weakless and worthless elementary things, to which you desire to be enslaved all over again?
Okay. So when we look at this verse, he says, now that you have come to know God, or rather to be known by him. So how would you know if God knows you? Okay. So then what does he know about you? Just say everything. That's a cute little answer.
Our heart.
Okay, well, that's another cute answer.
The number of hairs on my head.
Huh?
The number of hairs on my head.
Okay, that's true.
I was gonna be at a few hairs up on my head.
He scalped Thomas.
I think God decided to give me some hairs.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Some people have more than their share, and that's where it went. Okay.
Yep.
Because we can talk about, what is missed when we know about God, but know little about ourselves. What's missed?
What God notices about us.
Okay, what does he know about us? He knows our heart, and he knows he knit us together. Yeah, we got all that. But now this calls for us to understand who we are. If we don't understand who we are, then we really don't understand what God sees. We can say things in general, but what do we know about ourselves to understand what God sees? So what do we miss? If all we have is knowledge of God, what do we miss about ourselves?
A whole lot because we're made in his image.
Okay, well, that's true. Got to think hard.
Yeah, I feel like you're searching for a word. Let's play Wheel of Fortune.
Okay.
And then start giving us consonants.
I'll see what I can do. I can do that. Okay, Vanna.
Ooh, I'm bad.
You'll have to come up here and do vows and things like that. Yeah. All right. So we know of God's forgiveness, but we never really experience it. So what happens how do you actually experience God's forgiveness? Because this is the word for know. It's gnosko. And we talk about having knowledge. What's our definition of knowledge?
Facts.
Okay. Anything else?
Evidence.
Okay. That would go with facts, but I like that. What else? Okay, what's seen?
Experiences.
All right. Yeah. Keep thinking. This is the word they use in Galatians, not in Galatians there, in that verse 9. This is to be known by God, and then God knows us, or that he knows us. And so this is to say that the knowledge is reciprocated. He has an experience with us. He's got facts. He knows what he sees. He's got evidence about us. Galatians 4 is where we were.
I mean, there's another spot in the New Testament that talks about where it's like, well, I did all these things in your name.
Okay.
And then God said, depart from me, I never knew you.
Never knew you. So I don't know you because there's no reciprocation of intimacy, you might say. Because this knowing is more about an intimacy. It's not just a knowledge, it is a connection. It is a connecting. So when the scripture talks about how Adam knew Eve, it's just like, oh yeah, I know her. She's some chick that stands over there by the apple tree. As it is, she's somebody that I know. I'm intimate with her. I'm connected to her. I know who she is, which means I know in and out, which means this knowing is a attention. It's seeing. It is, we have an existence. We're connected. And because we have it, and if we don't understand that, then we just exist. We're not really paying attention to what, if we're created in God's image, well, what does that mean? What characteristics does he offer? What things do we need to experience because we live in a fallen world? Well, one of those is forgiveness. So what's another one? What happens if we live? Live the life of, or the lie, or basically pretend to be something we're not. So putting on a false front, that's really good English, isn't it? So
That'll catch up.
tough being human. Okay, yeah, it will. It'll catch up with you. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, well, how are you going to keep them from knowing who you are?
If we keep running ahead and making up a new lie.
You do. It's like you can lead secret lives. You can do all kinds of stuff. So when you have an age, when you have I'll do this for Molly's sake. When you have a snapshot or a trauma event, and we stay frozen here in this particular event, and we're walking feeling that we're worthless, we're not enough, what are we going to portray to people? No, we're worthless and not enough. And we're basically going to teach people to believe that about ourselves because we do. And what we miss then, we're going to be intimate with ourselves, which means then we're going to see what about ourselves?
We live out a false self instead of the truth.
Okay, we'll do that. But if I'm going to be connected to me and I'm going to understand me and I'm going to know me, I'm going to see potential, I'm going to see character and character flaws. Basically sin, what needs to be forgiven. And I'm going to see the depths of that sin and how it affects others. Yeah.
And have a good sense of what our own motivations are.
Okay. All right. What motivates? If I believe I'm worthless, then I'm going to go out and I'm literally going to create evidence to prove it, which means then this is what's going to motivate me, and I'm going to teach other people this about me, and maybe I can even fool God along the way or something. I don't know. Can't really. No.
We fool ourselves and then we can end up working on ourselves on things that aren't the right things to work on.
Yes. We will. So if we're known by God, what does he know? Well, okay, that's a good word, everything. Well, so we use these, wave the wand over the word and, okay. Now, if I were to name my weaknesses, what would they be?
Selfishness.
That
Everybody's
board,
got
that board is not big enough.
It's not.
It's called a fourth and a fifth step.
Yeah. Self-centeredness, we would see, because we use the word selfish. I'm going to be selfish enough to eat food. I'm going to be selfish enough to get rest.
You said that's okay.
That part's okay. I'm going to be selfish enough to go spend time with the Lord. I'm going to be selfish enough to do my devotions. But if I get self-centered, then what?
It's all about me.
It's all about me. So if it's all about me, what am I going to know about you? Oh, I'll know something, all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to know that you're going to get in the way of my self-centeredness, and I'm going to see all of your flaws and I'm going to pick on every little thing that's wrong with you.
That's the only thing you'll see.
That's all I'll see, because I won't see anything good, because I'm being self-centered here. So I'm not going to be able to do what if I can't see the good in you?
Relate.
I can't relate. What else won't I do?
Care.
Oh, that's a good word. I won't care.
Actually care.
Okay, actually care. Yeah, really care, not manipulative type caring.
Will you care when it turns on me?
Yes. Okay. Well. Yeah. Yeah.
Have a relationship, have intimacy.
Okay. Now turn to the person next to you and say something encouraging. You'll have to say it across the table because these two are connected at the hip.
Good job paying attention.
Okay, you gotta say something encouraging. Say something. And see what it feels like. Say it.
I appreciate that. Hearing about
Okay, you missed what? I said you gotta say something, not just give them, yeah, not look at them. Yeah, you gotta say something. Has to be words of encouragement. All right. So now, if you encourage a stranger, what you gonna do? What are you gonna say to a stranger? Because you're encouraging Molly. Okay, that's encouraging.
And she sat down.
What do you know about Molly?
Nothing.
That's it.
She hasn't
Okay,
really
Molly
smiled.
doesn't know anything about you. See, it's like there's no connection. And so what happens really here is there's an existence between the two of them. And so if and Bob, she looked at Bob and smiled, and Bob looked at her and smiled, and it's like, those are words or smiles of encouragement, but we don't know anybody. So it's like, if we don't know another person, how in the world are we ever going to be encouraging? How are we going to receive God's grace if we don't understand that He knows us and what He knows? But if all I do is look at the negative, all I'm doing is looking at what I created, the negative stuff in my life, what am I going to think about God?
But he did a bad job.
He did a bad job. And He doesn't care.
He made some jokes.
He made junk. He made trash. We have no worth or value, which then goes along with what we believe to begin with. So what did God create in us that's good? I hope this English is right next here.
Created in His image.
Huh?
We're created in His image.
Yeah, Jennifer said that earlier. We are created, but what does He know about us? And if we don't know about ourselves, we won't know what He knows about us.
He knows everything about it.
We say that, yes, they said that.
So that's.
But now you think about, what does He know?
Do you need
About
Vanna to step up to?
Yes,
the
please.
plate?
If you
Excuse
want,
me, let me get in character.
maybe your writing's better than mine. Oh my gosh, this is new. If Uma gets on here, who knows what will happen?
Hey, I've never seen these people.
Yeah. So you look at this, it says, we take safe and inconsequential sins to God for forgiveness. Inconsequential sins like, I'm not doing enough.
I'm impatient.
Huh?
I'm impatient.
Yeah, things like that.
I'm selfish.
Now, what happens when you find out that you are manipulative and that you have basically all you are is self-centered and all you want is what you want and you'll do anything you can to get it and find out there's nothing good in your flesh. And when you say there's nothing good in your flesh, then understanding exactly what that means. What happens if you find that out?
Then you have to figure out who you are.
Okay, well, you will figure out who you are. You'll figure out that simple nature part. Now, what's the good part? Not just created in His image, not that God just knows everything. What's the good part? Because see, now we're on this other side to where we think if we talk about the good parts, we're boasting. Now, the scripture tells me in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, go to Romans 12, 3.
Do we no longer need Vanna?
I don't know. Hang on. You might.
She needs a number of blanks to put up there.
I don't know.
Start making them
We
out.
can play hangman.
That might actually work. I don't know.
Okay, give us a ladder. How many ladders?
Well, read Romans 12, 3, and you might get a letter.
Yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself as overtaken.
So you remember the outline.
Thank you for helping me, Pat.
Okay, so this is the odd box. Marker back. The odd box. No man should think of himself more highly than he ought. What you think, Hal?
What did you say? Sober
Romans-
judgment.
huh?
Sober judgment.
Sober judgment, or with a sober mind,
As God has allotted.
as God is allotted. What's that mean?
To each a measure of faith. So God's gifted that. Whether we notice the odd box or not, that's up to us.
Okay. So we think with sober judgment? What do you mean by judgment? Because this word is not the typical word krena or katakrena or even diakrena. It's a totally different word. It's, you're not gonna write this.
Oh, gosh, are you giving me?
Sophroneo, no, it's Greek actually. Sophroneo. And sophroneo means that we are given sober judgment. It means as far as or an extent to which. Wow, that's interesting. Sulfur, yeah, I get it. She's hooked on phonics. I got it.
We're not there.
Okay, so your word means it means to an extent of. To an extent of. It means that there's only so much. And when it comes to sober thinking or sober judgment, you can only do it to a certain extent. You can only know so much about yourself. Or you can only, you don't think more highly than you ought, but you think with sober judgment, which means there are things you do know, and you can't, let me restate this, because it doesn't mean you can't know these things. It means that you will only take yourself so far because you're using good determination or reasonableness to say, I can't really think of myself that well above or beyond the ought. So within the ought, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm good.
So you're saying that we know when we're outside of that,
Yeah,
but we can notice. it.
only if we're using sober judgment. So within this, that means we can know self inside of this ought with sober judgment, which means I have gifts, I have talents, I have things that God has given me that I can know well about myself. I can see the fruit of the Spirit beginning to develop. I can see a kindness or a gentleness or a patience. I can see self-control. I can see these things beginning to develop inside of me as the Spirit of God is working within me. So now having sober judgment means I don't think outside of this box, which means I think more highly of myself than I should, which can be positive and negative. Positive is, and it's not a good positive, I don't need anybody. And the negative is, what would be the negative? I feel so bad about myself.
Self-deprecation.
Yes, it means that I'm not worthy of forgiveness. And so if I think that way, then I won't experience God's forgiveness. I won't be able to. And I have to live a life of pretend because
That's how you learn to justify it in your own mind instead of receiving God's gift.
okay,
You just create your own craziness.
I can create this type of thing, but I'll live this life of pretend because I don't know myself. But what I do know is I know shame.
And hide it.
And I do know hiding because part of the trauma snapshot is hiding, keeping secrets, and literally protecting whatever memory we have or addiction we have. We do what we can to keep it, and then we label ourselves according to what we're hiding. I'm not enough. If they only knew. If you all only knew how bad I was, you wouldn't be sitting here listening to me. If I knew how bad you were, I wouldn't be sitting here listening to you all either. But see, we don't let each other know each other like that because we think we're going to run people off. And if we say good things, they're going to say, well, aren't they full of themselves? This is the message we get. Instead of what's inside the ought box. It's truth, reality. Oh, Paul. Truth and reality are what is inside that box. Which means then I look at this from a sober judgment, the reality of what God has made me to be, how He's transformed me. Last week we talked about transformational knowledge. So this week we talk about transformational knowledge. So non-transformational knowledge was what? For those who were here and can look back at their notes.
So that's where we grow.
Non-transformational knowledge is not where
The knowledge, so we don't do anything with it.
okay, we have the knowledge, but don't do anything with it. We can have a knowledge of God. And then you read Galatians and he says, now that we know God, well, it's more that God really knows, or we're known by God, which means he sees us, he knows us, and now we have to believe it. We have to believe him. And then we have to trust that what he sees is something that's transformed. But now I have to pay attention to that. So write down one good thing you like about yourself. And you can make it as just as conceited sounding as you like. Huh? Beth, you just start your inexhaustive list. You start your infinite list of good stuff.
So
Hey, I was
awesome.
in Al-Anon. That's what they do in Al-Anon.
What, right? Good stuff?
On the 6th step, you write your negative,
Oh,
but you
yeah.
also do your positive.
Now, most of it is negative.
We're good at
Yeah. So what'd you write?
Caring for my family.
Okay.
It's like serving.
What about caring for yourself? It sounds self-centered, but yet Jesus cared for himself. How did he do that?
that. We got away early in the morning to pray.
Okay. Sometimes he stayed away all night. Okay. They tried to crown him king, make him king. What did he do? He ran away. So is that selfish of him? Shouldn't he stay there and let him do that? Because that's not what he was here for. So he can be selfish. So how do we take care of ourselves? It's great to take care of the family, but then we can do so much of that we forget we exist too. So how can we care for ourselves?
Doing things that like bring you joy.
Okay, that's one thing.
Maybe a creative outlet or something. You need a nap or a hot bath. or
Okay, I was going to ask, how many of you don't take baths? You don't take a bath, Molly? Okay, great. Appreciate you telling us that. All right, Bob doesn't take one either. Oh, take showers? Okay, all right, I'm sorry, I'll reword it. I didn't mean to frustrate. How many of you all take showers? Do you take a shower, and why do you take one? Huh? Cleanse yourself, for what? Because what happens if you don't take one? A shower. What happens if you don't take a shower? Huh? You start to stink. There's something else that happens along the way. If there's no bathing whatsoever.
No, it's not self-care.
Okay, and so what happens to your skin? It starts getting pretty shiny and the like. So when I was in the Navy, we had a guy who, and when you're in the Navy, you're very close quartered, and I had a guy who didn't take a shower. And he didn't wash his sheets. He didn't take care of anything. And it starts to get pretty aromatic in those small spaces. Yeah, we thought, is that potpourri? It was poopery. No, we were in barracks, but it was close enough. And so we decided to give the man a what they call
Shower party.
you call it a shower party. We called forgot what we called it. Anyway, we gave him one with scrub brushes and the like to emphasize. We threw his sheets and his mattress out the window so that he could get the message, and he got the message. So his shiny ears started getting less shiny and the like. So it's like you start to stink, you start to smell. But it also says it's a statement of what you think of yourself. That you're not really that hip on yourself or something.
I remember when you were like, look, can you show up to work today? I'm like, well, yeah. Like, can you shower today? Well, of course. Okay. All these things you were noticing.
Put on deodorant?
Yeah, but I
Shave?
didn't notice a little bit.
Okay.
But I didn't notice, I wasn't noticing these normal things that are self-care
Okay.
or being willing to see how important it is to take care of myself.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just mimicking, like, of course. course, you're supposed to do this, but it
Mhm.
wasn't for myself, in ways that were life-giving.
Yes.
In the ways, like according to how God's designed me.
Yeah. So we can do a lot of things for a lot of people and still feel bad about ourselves. And believe it or not, what you discover is you're hiding. If you're doing a lot of good stuff for other people and it looks like you're being very benevolent, when in fact you're not taking care of yourself, and if your estimation of yourself is poor, even when you're doing things for other people, this is hard to say, but it's part of my self-examination was I am doing it, I'm actually using someone else's problem to make myself feel better. So that's called manipulation, and it's using somebody wrongly. Even though it's helping them in that circumstance, it still was very self-centered.
But you could, I'm thinking from the standpoint of sometimes you do certain things because God puts on your heart that that's what you need to do. You could still be struggling in your own way, but He still uses you.
What word did you use? What? Do what? You're doing what? Struggling, did you say?
That you could be struggling.
You could be struggling. I'm sorry you didn't get to write that word up here. The word struggle is the key word. If there's struggle, because part of this, okay, yeah, certainly. You don't even have to use that color if you don't want. Struggle is the word that basically becomes what we have to go through as believers in the process of the undoing or process of sanctification. That's about as good as sulfur or whatever you put up there. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's it. So it's a struggle because, why is it a struggle?
That's where growth happens.
Okay, it does. If there is no struggle, if there's no shaking up, then nothing happens. So you have to, it's like, okay, I'm good enough. That's enough. All right, so you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. We've read it 1,000,000 times. Let's read it 1,000,001. Yeah. Yeah, it's the Luke chapter, yeah. You got it?
Yeah, I got it. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me.
Okay, so in order to put the ways of childhood behind you or put away childish things, I had to pay attention to the reality that I was acting childish. So you look at Paul the Apostle who writes this. How did he act childish?
He followed the culture.
Okay,
He just went along.
he did that, but with the grandiose thinking that he could get rid of the church. And he could go out there and he can just annihilate it. It's grandiose. It was self-centered. It was sociopathic. It was something that would be considered a childish thing. It's like a big temper tantrum. I'm going to get rid of the church. I've got a letter from the priest who's grandiose in themselves thinking they can get rid of it. It could be some small job. It was Gamaliel who told him, you can, if this is a man thing, then it's going to go away. If it's from God, you're going to find yourself fighting against God, which is exactly what he did. So he had to start putting away childish things, but I have to know what the childish things are. What are some childish things? You want to write these down? Okay, sure. What are some of the childish things? Okay, you gotta hurry because she already said one. Temper tantrum. I'm gonna let her do it because my spelling stinks.
Nail this either.
Temper tantrum. What else? What are some of the other childish things? Well, crying is not always.
Whining.
Whining, okay, yeah. Whining with big tears, that's good. Okay. What other childish things?
You have to make it worthwhile. if
You-
you're gonna whine.
Okay, you do?
I don't think self-centeredness.
Okay, well,
Because
self-
as a child.
But it encompasses other things like defensiveness. Okay,
Oh, conflict avoidance.
okay, conflict avoidance can certainly be a childish thing.
Manipulation.
Okay, manipulation, people pleasing.
Lying.
Line.
Fine, fine.
Her answer is important.
It is. I heard it. What else? What other childish
Ignoring.
things?
Ignoring.
Okay, ignoring.
Yeah.
Okay, complaining,
Uh,
keeping up.
I have a lot of respect for how you do all
creating
that.
chaos or creating problems.
Okay.
There.
I can literally create problems. I can start trouble, be a troublemaker. As Paul talks about the people in Thessalonica, it says they're not busy, they're busy bodies. So there's a lot of childish things that I have to know. So God sees the childish things. Then I need to know that, and he tells me because why would he tell me about these things? He wants me to change it. And that means that there has to now be a cooperation between myself and God. So I can go to God with these childish things and I can ask for forgiveness and I can repent of those things. Maybe I can experience that forgiveness. So how do we experience forgiveness? That's one of the things I got up here, experiencing forgiveness.
Before you get there, one of the
Okay.
things that you mentioned with the childish stuff is we have, in order to mature through it, we need to notice what lessons we learned from it,
Okay,
so we can avoid that.
hopefully, and that can be part of maturing is growing from the experiences. Maybe we won't repeat them. But if we do,
Or what purpose did it serve?
okay, well, they are. And if we do it again, what's a mature response versus a childish response?
Or how old do you feel?
How old do you feel? Huh?
Accepting that was done and letting it go.
Okay, accept the reality that, okay, I did it, made a mistake, been doing this all my life. What a surprise I would do it again. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm getting there. And maybe I will never do it again, but I can't live in an unrealistic world thinking it's possible that I will never do it again. I could. So that means then, as part of my self-examination, I'm accepting that I am flawed.
I like Dave's example looking at Abraham. You see this almost like grandiose description of him in Romans.
Yeah.
And then you look at the nitty gritty.
Look at what he does.
Yeah, and but God, he does see our heart's direction.
Mhm.
He does see our motive.
He does.
see that. And we can have confidence in that, given all of our flaws, that what God has designed and what he's put inside of us to hold fast to his word, that his will will come about. And we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to
Okay.
fret as if we're
Oh.
in control.
Worry? So what about worry?
Anxious.
Okay. So Paul tells us not to be anxious about anything while we get there because we're maturing toward that. It's not an instant stop being anxious. It's something that we mature toward. But what's in anxiety? What's okay? Well, fear is the first thing that people put. What else?
Lack of trust.
Huh?
Lack of trust.
Okay. No trust.
Unresolved issues.
Control.
Control. Or trying to control outcomes. See, like this is getting down to what am I really doing when I'm being anxious?
That's demanding control of an
It
outcome.
is. And it gets back then to this centeredness that we actually have. Thinking that we have some sort of ability to get things the way we want them.
I would think that would also be entitled.
Oh, yeah. Okay, oh, yeah. We're gonna write that one in red.
Yeah.
Oh.
I did that.
Entitled. But you look at all the things you have to overcome.
You can say idle.
Okay, well, okay, so now we're gonna talk about sloth. Which means I'm gonna be idle. And there's all these things that we look at, but it's not always the negative. Because within the confines of the ought box, we don't think of ourselves more high than we ought. But we think of ourselves with sober thinking, that's part of it. But then it's easy to write a list of negative. It's hard to write a list of positive. So you ask somebody to write down their character flaws, and you get just a mile long. Well, tell me about your character strengths. 3 things, maybe.
A lot of times we
They
need
feel
somebody
proud.
outside to notice those.
It does.
Or
And if they see it, and they tell us that, do we believe it? Yeah, all right, who are you looking at? You think that's me? Yeah, I'm not gonna believe that for a second. And so we never dare to expose the reality of our inner world to God or others, even though God knows it. And so that means knowing God then comes to know ourselves.
Yeah, but or is that more toward ourselves?
What you mean?
We don't dare to expose
Oh,
or
it's-
like speak it, to confess
Yeah.
out loud
Yeah.
to ourselves, and to like confess your sins to one another so you can be healed.
Okay,
The healing comes there when I tell you the exact nature of my wrongdoing.
okay,
But I also need to hear it.
dude. So Proverbs 28:3. Somebody turn to Proverbs 28:3. I think it's Proverbs 28:3.
Poor man who addresses the sword like a beating rain that leaves no food.
No, that's not it. I don't want nobody beating on anybody here. So, but it is 28.
About transgressions.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, 13. It's 13.
Is it 13?
Yeah.
I had the right proverb.
And 3. It says,
Yeah, there you are.
He who conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will find compassion.
Okay, it says we can conceal the transgression, which is what we're good at. If when we have these, we're carrying a lot of shame, and then we listen to the messages that we can't think well of ourselves. Now we're carrying more shame, but we conceal these transgressions, and why won't we prosper?
Because they're deep sixing us.
How's
Because
they doing that? You need to
we're-
explain deep six.
We're living that out.
Not everybody knows what deep six is.
So I believe I'm worthless, and I'm hiding that secret, or I'm hiding a secret sin, or sins, lots of them. And so, but I'm pretending I'm good, everything's fine. But
Okay,
I have to try to keep up this pretending, and so I'm concealing, I'm hiding all that toxicity inside. So I can't live with peace. I don't have any peace. I don't have any integrity. And so I can't, if I'm concealing that and trying to live out something it's never going to be authentic.
okay.
So I can't have any kind of peace. I'll be chaotic inside.
If I continue to hide, authenticity is questionable because I may be using what looks like authenticity as a way to mask and to fool everybody around me. See, this is a tough job to have the gift of yourself if you don't really look at true motives, what we're actually doing, why we're doing what we're doing. Christianity calls for us to know that, to understand that. If we conceal it, then when he says don't prosper, it means like you won't grow up. You stay immature. You just stay stuck. You stay right where you are.
Seems like, just like,
Go ahead.
when you go back to the fall with Adam and Eve, it's like covering of the sin became a natural instinct
Yes.
that we inherited from them.
We get out the sewing machine and we put the fig leaves together, and we have the whatever it is we're trying to conceal, our nakedness. And I said the word nakedness. I think it's just because you got no clothes on. We're talking we are laid bare before God. God sees everything about us, and yet we act like He doesn't. But I can't fool God, but I can fool everybody else.
That is a form of playing God, right?
It is very much so, and it's continuation of the self-centeredness. So to look deep would require what?
Self-examination.
Okay, well, we go back to self-examination, which is a great statement, and then you have to say, what does that mean?
You start thinking about the things that we are going through, the feelings, the emotions, asking ourselves, like, where's that coming from? And starting to figure out why we feel why we're doing the things that we're doing.
So it's like we got a simple nature, and we can say, what's my simple nature? Well, no, it's basically, it's something where our simple nature will take opportunity to use. It's not just we got a simple nature. Yeah, I got one, but I typically have to have a circumstance that I will begin to take opportunity with and begin to use it for my benefit. You gonna say something, Chris?
I was gonna say, just being willing to recognize the bad things about us, not just the good things about us, you know, to be willing to see that.
Yes.
And that's part of the self-reflection.
It is a combination of both, being able to see both. So that we face the reality of our inner worlds. Let's look at Romans 7:23-24.
Oh, and this over here on the board, it's us living through a lie. Things that are not true about us.
Yeah.
And so the self-examination is more about looking for truth. And then basing that truth then on God's word versus your own experiences.
Well, it could be our experiences where we sin, right?
Yeah.
We confess the reality of
Yeah.
our sin, being really specific,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can be healed. That's the whole point of it. It's not a shaming thing.
It's not at all. It is about healing. If you don't get healed, okay, so you got a festering wound, and you're like, oh, I don't need to heal that. I don't need to do nothing with it. What's the outcome?
Amputation.
Okay, or yeah, infection. It could lead to gangrene. It could lead to amputation. All kinds of things. So what's it say here in Romans 7? I'm not getting up much because this chair is just too dang comfortable to get out of.
You're trusting.
But there is another power within me that is at war with my mind. This power makes me a slave to the sin that is still within me.
Mhm.
Oh, what a miserable person I am. Who will free me from this life that is dominated by sin and death?
So he talks about being a miserable man, wretched. The word literally means struggle. I was struggling man that I am. But he sees this in his members, a law waging war. Against what? There are two laws that work there. What's the first one? Well, that's one of them. The other one is the law of sin and death. And it's waging war against, the law of sin and death is waging war against the law of his mind. Okay, we got two ingredients here, and that's all we have in that particular verse. The law of sin and death and the law of the mind. Who's going to win?
Depends on who you feed.
If I'm just using the law of my mind, and that's all I'm doing, who's going to win? Sin and death's going to win. Which means now I'm going to put the effort into trying to change this or fix it or try to make myself look better than I am. I am not going to win that war. That war will be won by the law of sin and death. So then he says, oh, struggling man that I am. Here I am struggling back and forth. I am trying to work this thing out. I'm trying to work this thing out. And I'm doing all this. And he says, in exasperation, who's going to deliver me from this body of death? So now what do we learn about ourselves?
We're helpless.
We are helpless. Now, who likes to know you're helpless? Bob likes to know that. He's an oddball. Okay.
Yeah, we admit, I ask for help all the time.
Yes. Okay, yeah, sure.
I know you don't. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so read verse 25.
Mine at church, is it?
Yeah, you get struck. You don't need to move away from that table. You are sitting way too close to him when he does that.
I like all the knowing laughter. That's
Yeah.
good.
Go ahead, read verse 25.
Thank God, the answer is in Jesus Christ our Lord. So you see how it is. In my mind, I really want to obey God's law, but because of my sinful nature, I am a slave to sin.
Okay, because the law, he says when the commandments rose up, I died because I was not going to beat it. It condemned me. It showed me exactly what I am. There was no way I was going to beat it. And so then he says, now, I myself serve the law of God with my mind. And that's the best I can do because I cannot keep the law of God. Why can't I keep it? Huh? Because of our sinful nature, because it's a law of sin and death is now at war with the law of the mind, and I'm with my mind, I'm trying to keep the law of God. the law of sin and death is going to beat me. Because the law literally condemns me. It already tells me, he said, I would not have known covetousness except for the law. So now I know covetousness. Okay, I'm going to stop coveting. There I go. I'm stopping coveting. But I'm going to go over here and gossip about Thomas. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I got to stop gossiping. Oh my gosh. And now I'm gonna stop stealing.
Stop worrying about that.
Yeah. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna stop stealing. Okay. But I'm still gossiping. Oh, I gotta beat that one too. Oh, now I'm coveting again. Oh my gosh, because stealing involves coveting. I can't get it. Oh, what am I gonna do? You see, yeah, it is. It's like
Realize it's a process.
juggling plates. Even in the process, I can't do it.
How could you even have an interview?
You can't. It's exhausting. So now go read Romans 8:1. Somebody got it? Romans 8:1?
So now there is no condemnation for those born to Christ Jesus.
Well, how come there's no condemnation? You see, if I don't understand who God is in relation to me, and I don't understand me in relation to God, then I will condemn myself. I have to know me, and I have to know who God is, and I have to understand how he sees me, because Paul just described his struggle, which is an impossibility to overcome. He can't do it.
Yeah, I like that in verse 25. You read that, it's like he doesn't look at it at himself for healing and struggling. He looks outside of himself at Jesus and God for healing and the struggle.
He has to look outside of himself because he knows inside himself he cannot do it. Because the law of sin and death, waging war against the law of the mind, the law of the mind is trying to keep the law of God, and the law of God condemns you. It's like, there ain't no way you're going to do this.
I like 8 too, because you said.
Oh, we're not there yet. Don't run ahead. Nice try, Josh. Just don't get there. I like it when people try to run ahead. Okay. Because you all get the struggle here. And so if you don't understand yourself and you don't understand God, then you will continue to try to do this, because that's part of what trauma does. Trauma sets you into a struggle to try to overcome, to look better than you actually are. So to not look like you're at fault. Or you'll divert and have an addiction that says, see, you need to pay attention to that instead of what actually happened to me, because there's so much shame around that, whatever happened, that I don't want you to know about it. So I'm going to start drinking and drugging and sexing and gambling and whatever else I'm going to do in order to get you to divert you to that instead of looking at what's really going on with me. This is the law of sin and death at war with the law of the mind while I'm trying to look better than I actually am. Now, Josh, you can read verse 2.
For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death.
Okay, so now we got a third law. Well, we have a fourth law, because you have the law of God, which is the 10 Commandments, probably. Huh?
Renewing of mind.
Okay. And the law of the Spirit of life. Why do you think it's called that?
So that's what rose Jesus from the dead,
And why is it called a law?
because it's a fact.
It is a fact. It is the way God works. God works within the confines of what's orderly. So the law of sin and death actually has its order. It is a law that states you are not going to beat it. Because I've got the law of the mind, which standing by itself cannot overcome that, because the law of the mind isn't strong enough to overcome the law of sin and death. And so the law of the mind can have the intention of keeping the law of God, but now I've got double jeopardy. The law of sin and death is beating on my mind. The law of God is condemning me. So now I've got this third or fourth law, which is the law of Spirit of life. So you go back to, I think it's 2 Peter. I don't have the verse in my head, but it's where he talks about it's the Spirit of God, the same Spirit that rose Jesus from the dead is the same Spirit that fills us. That Spirit is called the Spirit of,
I think it's from.
it's actually in Peter, but it might be in Romans 2 somewhere. But that spirit is what? The spirit of. Because now we have another law.
Spirit of him who raised, Spirit of God. Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you.
Yeah, that's it. Because now we have the law of truth. Go to John chapter 4, read verse 23, 24. Four.
God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth.
Yes. So now we have the law of truth, or the spirit of life. And the law of truth is, this is what the Spirit of God brings to us. What is the truth it speaks? Because Jesus said, my spirit comes, it will guide me into some truth,
All truth.
all truth. So that encompasses what's good and what's evil. So the spirit of truth, I'm going to go to God, I'm going to worship in spirit and truth, I'm going to worship him this way. What will that worship then look like?
Well, part of it's gonna be confession.
Okay? Now we're going to turn in again to another law. The law of confession. It is a law because when I confess, there is an outcome. So it's like if you break the speed limit and a cop is sitting there, what's the outcome?
We'll tell you.
Unless the cop's asleep, you're going to get pulled over. And then if you didn't get pulled over, that's called the law of grace. For which you come home and you think, oh, let me draw out the beads of sweat.
And I'm
'Cause
pretty sure when I confessed that I deserved that, I didn't get reckless driving.
No, you didn't. That was maybe so. You might have got some grace because of that. She was driving like a mad woman trying to get to a hair appointment through Shelbyville. The Shelbyville police were like, here we go. She had all kinds of excuses and it didn't help a bit. She still got a ticket. All right. So you begin to see this law of the spirit of life encompasses several elements. The law of grace, the law of truth, the law of confession. It is the law of life. It's basically giving us all of these things, which means now the Spirit is now in us, showing us truth about ourselves. Our worship is going to be confession, but it's going to be more transparency, and it's going to be relief because we have expressed whatever it is we need to express to God. It's an experience of forgiveness that God will give us when we experience that, but this all comes from knowing ourselves. So what also means that it's one thing to feel bad about my sin. It's another thing to use the sin as an opportunity to beat myself up, which means then I will not experience God's forgiveness. Beating ourselves up is not repentance. It's self-flagellation.
You said it's pride, right?
It really is. It's prideful in the sense that I'm thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have known, but we're going down all that stuff and shaming ourselves instead of recognizing I got this lousy habit that's been in my life for a long time. It's not something that I need to, like give myself permission to keep doing, but it is something that I need to repent of. But also now I start to keep track of the reality that it's becoming less and less, but not by my power. Something's happening. This is called transformational knowledge. This is what we start to know about God. We start to know about his grace. If God has grace, there has to be something to be gracious toward. So you can be a gracious host and never invite anybody over. What do you think that would look like? I'm a very gracious host. I sure love having company. I enjoy people coming over and having meals with us and all this type of stuff. That's great. Yeah. But I never ask anybody to come over. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So, what do we got so far?
I like the law of grace because we all want to experience grace, but we don't want to admit that we don't want to be specific about our sin a lot of times to admit we need it or to confess it out. So we miss out on grace.
Yep. So I know God is gracious. And I know he's forgiving, but that means I have to acknowledge what he's going to be gracious toward. And what he's actually forgiving is something that I understand is against him. It's an offense against God, but it has to mean something in order to experience that forgiveness. There actually has to be a relief. And part of the law of forgiveness says there's relief. And the law of forgiveness says there is forgetfulness. I've taken your sins as far as the east is from the west, or I've cast into the sea to remember it no more. That's part of the law of forgiveness. Which means then, we have a law of mercy. So because of that forgiveness, because part of that is now he's merciful toward us, and that he invites us into the kingdom of God. But it's an invitation to know ourselves, because I can't understand forgiveness and I can't understand his grace until I understand why he's being gracious in the first place. So there would have to be a deeper understanding to know what we are, to understand the depths of Jesus' sacrifice for us. If we're to understand that, there has to be an understanding of ourselves. If I don't understand that, then I won't get the impact. I won't get the full impact or understanding or experience of what God actually did for me on the cross. So I have to know myself. And then I have to start seeing that it is a gift. Because if I'm putting myself down, what's it say in Genesis 9:6?
Yeah, every
You can keep trying there. You might get it. The law of the memory. Which is what? Yeah.
All of ours is different.
What's it say?
whoever sheds man's blood by man, his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God he made man.
Okay, so I won't get the full impact or understanding of just how important it is that I am created in His image. That how God takes that seriously. If I don't understand that, then I will put myself down, diminishing God's creation, and all I'll do is look at the negative. I will not see the transformation that God is doing inside of me. I won't pay attention to it because I'm too busy looking at the junk.
I think that was a great thing you said probably 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Wow, you remember something I said that long ago?
Well, to make a list of
Oh, that's right. I did
hurdles
say
that we
that,
will
didn't
overcome.
I? Yeah.
And to notice the progression. In us doing that together, we're actually able to see that even in other people.
You can't see it in other people. You can maybe see it in other people and compare yourself and then discount your own experience. That's not helpful. So you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and Paul says, do not compare yourselves to one another. Because in comparison, then you start coveting, you start getting mad, you start getting jealous of another person's stuff, or you think you're not enough. You start evaluating yourself accordingly.
But noticing somebody else's progression or encouraging them, I think that's different. That's what you wanted us to do earlier.
It is. It's easy to make a list of junk. So what sins do we confess? There are more distractions from this reality. See, that it's like we have to confess sins that are more distractions from the reality. So we can find legitimate relief. And then there's one more bullet. What else? No, there's two more. Not doing enough for the kingdom is a distraction. So Luke 18, 10 through 14, and we'll stop there. It's up there. It's like ragu spaghetti sauce. It's in there. 18:10. And this is the parable of the two men going up to the temple. The Pharisees standing, like he's there, the tax collector is there, and the Pharisee says, standing by himself, pray thus, God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. It's like here's the bad thing, here's the good, I don't do all those bad things, but here's the good things I do. Totally imbalanced. What's the tax collector say? But standing far off, he would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. It's like this man had done enough of self-examination to understand he was convicted of what he did and was able to go and confess this before God and find justification by that confession. The other man was trying to justify himself. He was hiding in plain sight. Okay. I hope this made sense. If it didn't, well, I'm sorry.
Keep coming back.
Yeah. Just stay to the end and it'll really come clear.